This is Murder in the Rain, where each week Emily Rowney, Alicia Holland, and Josh McCullough tell true crime stories of the Pacific Northwest. Murder in the Rain contains graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
The other day, Netflix released a 3-part documentary about Woodstock 99 called Trainwreck. I was 19 when that happened, and as a fan of pretty much every performer, it was a huge moment in music as a whole and for myself. Before watching, I remembered the many reports of rape and sexual assault, the mud and the fires, but the details shown in Trainwreck made it even more horrific. For those who weren't around, Woodstock 99 was to be the 30-year celebration of the original 3-day music festival full of peace, love, and weed. And probably acid, too.
Definitely.
It was anti-war, anti-military, and anti-capitalism. And the same guy who put together the first one also ran the one in 99. It was disheartening to see that over time, he'd gone from peace and love to how do we make every aspect of this event profitable? Instead of it being about the music and people and connection, the festival runners had no clue about the artists or their audiences and never considered the needs of 250,000 youngsters that would be camping, partying, showering, and shitting in an abandoned military base for 3 days. Attendees were price gouged for food and water, and as the asphalt baked them from below, the sun above blasted the crowd into madness. The surrounding buildings of the military-industrial facility offered little shade or escape. Creating a lineup that included Korn, Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers pumped the already discontented crowd into a frenzy. Festival department heads failed to create an experience that would peak and release each night, giving its 250,000 guests the chance to cool off both mentally and physically. So the fury of the crowd turned toward festival staff, security peace patrol guards, vendors, facility structures, and vehicles.
It was bad, is what he's saying.
The mob's weapon of choice was fire, and the night burned orange and ember-choked across all 3 nights. The crowd had become like a single creature, breathing and moving together in waves, and reverting to its lowest, most animalistic form. As the documentary proceeds, you can feel the tensions rising with each passing hour, and it made my heart race with fear to watch footage of groups of men aggressively surrounding girls and women just trying to have some topless, hippie summer fun. As security was both stretched to breaking and completely unable to enforce festival rules in any way, the most dangerous men in the crowd used it as an opportunity to commit an untold number of rapes and sexual assaults. By the end of those 3 days, there were as many deaths reported, due to heat, a heart condition, and an incident involving a pedestrian and a vehicle. Even though the mob of 250,000 was out of control, it didn't do as much damage as it could have. But as you watch, you can see how that crowd could have overrun the backstage area if they had wanted. And even killed Jewel!
Oh, God. Not Jewel. America's sweetheart.
The catastrophe of Woodstock 99 was anger given life by the greed of those in power, and it is miraculous it wasn't a mass casualty event. I was already writing about the 1968 Oregon State Penitentiary Riot when I began watching that documentary, and I couldn't help but see the correlations between the festival rioters and those in the prison. And I know a music festival in no way compares to prison, but they share similar issues. Corners were cut to increase profit, and the actual needs of people were ignored and their complaints dismissed, resulting in chaos. So, feeling abandoned, the mob lashed out, the only way to be heard. And to be clear, I am not equating the rapes and sexual assaults with the rioting. They are vastly more heinous and troubling, though both were completely preventable. Quote, the tardy recognition of racial, national, and religious identities in the United States gave impetus to the social revolution of the 1960s. The United States was in a process of growing liberalization, tolerance, receptiveness, and impartiality. The year before the original Woodstock 69 was one hell of a year. In January 1968, the American public's support of the conflict in Vietnam turned after the Tet Offensive and the Siege of Khe Sanh drew heavy casualties, both military and civilian. On April 4th, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. On June 5th, Robert F. Kennedy, a 1968 Democratic presidential candidate known as a civil rights advocate and organized crime smasher, was assassinated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. My mother and father, Gib and Nancy, were that night in the ballroom Kennedy was heading to when he was shot. Gib had canvassed for Bobby in the 4 days leading up to the primary election, and when he met by chance someone in the Kennedy campaign, and she found out the staggering number of houses he'd canvassed in LA's summer heat, she set up a meet between Gib and Robert Kennedy that was never to be. I asked my dad to write about that night for this bit of the episode. Dad said when he proofread what he sent me, he wept. The pain is still there. On July 23rd, racial tensions exploded into riots in the wake of a mass casualty shootout in Cleveland, Ohio, that took place between police and a Black Power group. The civil upheaval continued for 4 days. The next day in Oklahoma, Kristen Chenoweth was born, which was as equally cultural shaping.
I love her.
Which was as equally culture shaping an event as any of these other listed. Right?
She's also America's sweetheart, I think.
Yeah, I love her. She's
Broadway's
funny.
sweetheart.
I'm just saying it's important.
Maybe not equally, though.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
A flu pandemic reached the United States in September of 1968. Oh, what's that you say? You're damn right they didn't teach this one in school. Over the next 3 years, it would kill between 1 and 4 million people worldwide. Did you guys know about that?
No. I've heard of the one in, 1918?
Yeah.
But this was just like a regular flu?
Yep. Regular flu pandemic, and it,
Yeah,
killed-
I don't think we talked about it in school.
I never even heard of it. Did you?
Only because I was researching flu stuff a while back.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
But otherwise, you wouldn't have any clue.
Correct.
Wow.
Recent innovations in the ease and availability of international air travel are pointed to as contributing factors to the rapid spread of the virus, which, of course, was given racist monikers like the Hong Kong flu. In November, Richard Nixon was elected president, which led to a time of prosperity and peace the country had never seen. Just kidding. Just kidding!
Sorry.
And in December, the Apollo 8 astronauts became the first people to orbit the moon, which some of Oregon State Penitentiary's inmates may have been able to spy a glance of at an angle through a tiny cell window or in the space between buildings as they moved throughout their blocks. I began my research on this case searching Oregon State Penitentiary. I limited the search to 1968 because I wanted to get a feel for the prison and prisoners' conditions in the time leading up to the riot, which occurred in March. To say I found some evidence of inmate discord and a facility literally rotting from the inside out would be an understatement. The first article I found, dated New Year's Day 1968, details the previous night's killing by police shootout of one Daniel Clyde Death Jr. in Baker, Oregon, 340 miles east of Salem. And yeah, you heard me, D-E-A-T-H. He had been an inmate of Oregon State Penitentiary until 4 months prior, as had his accomplice, Galen Clipston. Policeman John Dugan's left index finger had been shot off in the exchange of gunfire, which began as a traffic stop because the car had been swerving across the road. As Dugan approached, Death and Clipson aimed a pistol and shotgun through their open windows and began firing. Officer Dugan had also taken a bullet to the hip. Clipson was shot in the neck but survived. Death Jr. had been shot in the head. The same night Mr. Death died, New Year's Eve, 22-year-old John Sipes, who was in the penitentiary for assault and battery, attacked a guard for the second time that day. The first incident occurred earlier in the yard, and the second in the dining room that evening after the viewing of a film. Once subdued, Sipes was sent to an isolation cell, where he remained until February 2nd, his final day alive. In 1968, Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem was in crisis, and it seemed like fate that a local newspaper, the Capital Journal, had printed its last article in a series regarding the prison's declining conditions, which had become so dire, 3 inmates died of suicide within the span of a month.
I don't know what the normal numbers are, but that seems high.
It's very high. The body of John Sipes, whom I just mentioned, was found hanging by the neck from a bedsheet on February 2nd. Serving 20 years for armed assault and robbery, he had been alone in an isolation cell for over a month. His death would prompt a lawsuit brought on by his mother for $325,000, or nearly $3 million today. In her suit, Laverne Grant, Sipes' mother, claimed that officials should have known her son would have attempted to take his own life, and therefore should have had precautions and checks in place. She also claimed to have evidence of marijuana and weapons being trafficked to and from the prison. Conveniently, just 5 days after the suit was filed, Larry Stubbs, who was an OSP for burglary, was charged with narcotics possession. Surely a PR move by the prison. The drugs he was in possession of were found on December 31st, the same day of John Sipes' multiple altercations. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the outcome of the lawsuit, so perhaps it was settled privately. On Valentine's Day, 34-year-old inmate Doyle Trapp died from self-inflicted wounds to his wrist and throat. Monday, March 4th, James Perry, also 34, died from suicide. He cut himself with a razor blade. Perry was serving a term of 5 years for getting caught being an ex-convict in possession of a gun, and he'd been at the penitentiary for less than a month. The first in the series of articles the Capital Journal printed detailed Warden Clarence Gadden's advanced age and declining health as a contributing factor to the unrest, as those interviewed stated plainly that he could no longer appropriately perform his job. The turnover rate for correctional officers was high, a combination of low pay and burnout from the rising tensions within the prison. Employees interviewed anonymously claimed that contraband like weapons and drugs moved freely about the institution. The second article in the series, published March 8th, dug further into Warden Gladden's weakening grip on the prison. He had come down with pneumonia in January and often suffered from intense back pain. He'd been away from his post since January 22nd and, on doctor's advice, could not yet return to work. More anonymous prison staff said that old coot Gladden, quote, resisted the new wave of prison rehabilitation ideas that were gaining popularity across the country. The final article in the series focuses on Corrections Division Administrator George W. Randall and his desire to enact further rehabilitation programs than had been established at the prison. Randall also pushed for a second prison facility to be built, with the goal of separating the general population from those with cognitive disabilities and mental illness. The article details good intentions, but shows that very little action had taken place regarding OSP's reform. A college study program called Upward Bound was established at the prison, and those involved in the program were given freedoms previously unknown to those incarcerated. Their special library hours, access to a television and exercise equipment, and the bypassing of routine searches and inspections fomented discord and agitation among those not chosen to participate, which was every other man inside, except the 26 chosen Upward Boundees.
That reminds me of like tag classes when I was a kid.
What's that?
Talented and gifted. So kids were tested if they were shown to be doing better academically. And then every like Wednesday or something, they all got to leave and go to their special school to take their special classes.
My mom said no, I couldn't do it.
My mom wouldn't let me get tested. I didn't find that out till I was a grown-ass adult.
I also was supposed to skip a grade, and my mom said no, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
about
that's
her.
good. Yeah. I would have liked to have known that they wanted to test me. I would have felt like less, like an idiot outcast, but tag. So I can understand on a very small level as a child, I was like, I want to go see what they're doing at this special school where they get to go outside or they get to do special science projects or all this cool stuff. And I'm just stuck at school because I'm the stupid kid or whatever. So I can understand where those feelings would be coming from.
Pretty frustrating.
Very.
And a little fun fact here, from January 1st to March 9th, the day the riot began, I found 3 instances of inmates escaping. One walked away from a work detail, one fled in a stolen truck and ended up committing a home invasion and shooting a woman twice. She lived. And the last escapee used a forklift to get himself over a wall.
Wow.
What I'm saying is, officials were running the loosest, goosiest, no rules, just right prison, maybe in the entire country.
Yeah, I feel like if the inmate can get access to a forklift, probably not the most secure.
I will say we still have a lot of escaped prisoners in Oregon.
That's
That
true.
work release program, like they disappear and dip out of that pretty regularly. We usually recapture them, but I can think of 3 that are on the run right now. So even with the better prison system, we still have escapees.
You got to work on that.
Definitely.
And all of this was under the eye of Administrator George W. Randall, who got the job in 1965. He was progressive in his support of work release and other programs of rehabilitation, which clashed harshly with Warden Gladden's old school grind them into submission tactics and led to a crisis in leadership. And here, a 1938 quote from The Shadows, Oregon State Penitentiary's self-published magazine. Quote, "Castellated walls tower up and shadow into sinister oblivion 1,000 empty lives. Each brick in the wall might scream out the anguish of a futile dream exploded. Beyond the wall is light, and all within gloom. With future freedom a star of hope on the horizon of life, convicts pace up and down the exercise yard." Oregon State Penitentiary is the oldest and only maximum security prison in the state. There were around 1,400 prisoners at OSP in 1968, contained within its 25-foot-high wall that extends 15 feet into the ground. Within those walls, correctional officers upheld order with fists and billy clubs, alongside the ever-looming threats of a stint in segregation, which were never set with an end date, leaving inmates to toil in a private hell of darkness and filth. In the days leading up to the unrest, a convict was asked about the prison's never-ending strife. He said, quote, "Today maybe we are animals. Every man reaches his boiling point." At 4:15 on March 9th, 1968, the riot began when a guard stopped an inmate for a random search. The inmate refused and began fighting with the guards. As it went on, other prisoners joined the conflict, and within the first hour, nearly 40 hostages had been taken, consisting of correctional officers and prison staff. The prisoners in charge demanded all segregated inmates in isolation units be released, and for every 20 minutes that passed in stalemate, a hostage would be killed. As the number of rioters ballooned to over 700, the prison's control center was overtaken by inmates wielding handmade shivs, tipping the power balance and essentially seizing control of the entire prison. Over the first several hours of unrest, 36 hostages were freed and only 4 remained. They were correctional officers Lieutenant Ralph E. Pribble, Sergeant R.D. Myers, Lieutenant Hal Masterson, and Officer C.E. Mann. Department of Corrections Administrator Randall arrived and assumed control of forces outside the facility. He ordered that no force, shooting, or tear gassing would take place, which completely neutered the established riot control plan. When inmates heard this, they rampaged unchecked, burning through cell blocks and workshops, the kitchen, and dining room, looting and assaulting each other. Quote, "By nightfall, the buildings were burning. The commissary had been looted. Blankets and bedding were brought up to the yard by the inmates. Small makeshift tents sprang up. Convicts were seen eating fresh bread by the loaf and sheet cakes by the dozen. They drank milk by the gallon and cooked meat and steaks over large bonfires built from the wreckage of the prison. The loud strains of steel guitars played in the background as a night of destruction occurred. There were many assaults, several knifings, and total destruction of property. Taunting profanities were thrown to the guards, whom they knew could not take action.
Josh, usually when I need to buy something for my masculine friends and family, I have the hardest time figuring out what to buy. But not anymore. I got lucky and found Trendhim.
I know Trendhim. Trendhim offers high-quality and affordable accessories for men. They have everything you can think of, from tie accessories and hats to travel bags and watches. They have more than 6,500 different products.
Exactly. Now I'm not going to be aimlessly wandering around Target when I need to find the perfect gift. I can go online and find it at Trendhim. In fact, that's what I did this past weekend, and I have a surprise for you. Trendhim offers some very high quality watches, and they're all customizable. You can have them engraved or even upload a custom picture. So of course, I had to get us some one-of-a-kind Murder in the Rain watches that we can wear and maybe even give one away to one of our lucky listeners. They should arrive any day now.
I hope you nabbed some of their awesome sunglasses too.
You know it.
I can't wait to see how those watches turn out. And if you want to customize a watch too, Murder in the Rain listeners can get 15% off their Trendhim order.
You can click the link on the Murder in the Rain promo codes page or go directly to trnd.hm/rain and use our discount code RAIN to get 15% off your order. Josh, in your opinion of what you've read, was it just a numbers thing because so many prisoners were involved? You know, it's just hard to imagine 40 officials with batons and handcuffs and who knows what else they had as far as weaponry to be taken over by the inmates. Was it just a numbers thing that it's this many guys going at once?
I think so. Yeah, it was about half the population of the prison. So I
No
think
lack
so.
of preparation.
And yeah, they weren't prepared, and the morale among staff and guards is at
Oh, right.
all-time low.
Everything
They're
was so bad.
They're not gonna want to fight for that control.
Yeah,
They're gonna want to get
I'm
away.
not going to die for this building.
And they know that that every inmate in that place blames them personally, probably.
Yeah.
Even though it's not their fault. Though the physical violence is.
I like to think there are some of those guards who didn't believe in their boss either, who
Yeah.
kind of let it happen and just
Mhm.
backed away. Like, well,
Yeah, that's kind of their own form of rioting. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I'll go with you guys.
And it was also a clash of their two ideologies. And and as a result, they just didn't know which direction to go. Anybody. Prisoners, staff, anybody.
You know, I'm bad with names. So we had the warden,
That's Gladden.
and he was the old guy, and he
And
was
the
very
new guy
old
come
school.
Yeah.
And then the new guy was like the administrator guy.
Yeah, so he's the level above Gladden. So he
Oh,
runs
okay.
everything in the Department of Corrections, and then Gladden is the warden of the penitentiary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Administrator Randall entered into negotiations with a body of convicts and their spokesman, Tony Graven, and Billy Ray Bowling. Randall did this alone, without consulting any prison officials or riot control experts, of which he could access freely. He nearly agreed to release all segregated inmates before an assistant of his said, "Hey boss, that's a really terrible idea." Luckily, he took the advice, and the men remained in isolation. For some reason, Randall also allowed the press to interview inmates through the prison gates. Their complaints weren't extravagant. They were simply looking to improve their basic human needs. Warden Gladden was too strict, their food was cold, and the medical care was abysmal. Their first demand was the resignation of Warden Gladden. They got their wish when, just hours later, Gladden resigned officially, though he had actually submitted the paperwork 3 days before the start of the riot, due to his failing health. When Randall met with the convicts again, they presented him with 9 further demands: medical improvements, reestablish of the inmate council, a new canteen, less forced savings, school and work release programs, improved correspondence and visiting policies, bath and entertainment enhancements, vocational programs, and clothing. It was high noon on March 10th, 20 hours into the riots, when Randall agreed to address and make changes to all points on their list, bringing the carnage to an end with $2 million in damage and the death of one inmate, Thomas Bond. Governor Tom McCall's chief of staff was minutes from ordering a tactical assault on the prison when negotiations came to agreeable ends. A grand jury later concluded that riot officers could have ended the unrest earlier. Administrator George Randall was the only witness called who disagreed. He came under intense scrutiny in the wake of the riot, with the grand jury unveiling the truth about the man who came to Oregon in 1965. Quote, with a resume implying academic excellence and graduate work at Auburn, Georgetown, George Washington, and Wisconsin universities. He claimed to have served with the FBI as an executive assistant to J. Edgar Hoover. In fact, Randall never graduated from college. He was never an agent of the FBI, but only a messenger boy and typist for the Bureau for 2 years. In the years he claimed service to the FBI, he was actually working in an insurance company and later a furniture factory. There was not a single shred of evidence that Randall had any experience in corrections or penology.
It's just shocking because he's just a full-on con man. basically.
I wonder how often that happened back then,
A lot, I
all the
bet.
time.
because there wasn't like a background check like we do today. Even those you can get by.
Yeah. Even, and, nowadays you can have references that are just friends. So back then, if they even checked that.
And you can, much more easily check a person's face
And
to
it's-
make sure it's the face it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of surprising that, like, working in corrections, he'd never crossed paths with someone else that was also actually in the
Sure,
FBI or
yeah.
something, to be like, oh, did you know so-and-so or so-and-so?
And
be
then
like,
get caught.
no, I worked at the super secret department. Like,
Yeah, I believe Randall worked in the Midwest or on the East Coast before. So I think that he didn't know anyone here. Maybe there was a reason he moved to Oregon. There's a reason that so many people head west for
Yeah.
that sort of thing, and he got away with it for
Running
a
away
few
from
years.
something.
But then, yeah. This hadn't been the first conflict between prisoners and officials at OSP. On Friday, July 10th, 1953, 1,100 inmates took over the prison. Just like in 68, the grievances were in regard to the medical care, segregation and isolation units, recreational options, clothing, and food. At one point, 2 guards in the hospital faced the oncoming mob. Before they could become injured, hostages, or worse, they were rescued. Later, the dining room was destroyed, and somehow, officials were able to open the doors to the yard and herd everyone outside. Locking down the cell blocks, the rioters were now confined to the yard. Spotting a boxcar at the rail gates, prisoners joined together in trying to push it through the gates. Rifle fire from the lookouts injured one inmate and put their attempt to a stop. Unlike Gladden, the warden called for support, summoning officers from Portland, the Dalles, and Eugene. By the end of the night, more than 25 officers had arrived. Also unlike 68, the riot went on through the weekend. 5 buildings were set ablaze, and unable to go back inside, the inmates started to succumb to the heat of mid-July. Besides being forced into the sun, they couldn't access food, water, or shade. Digging into the yard, they had hoped to hit the water main and at least quench their thirst and cool off, but their attempt was unsuccessful. By Monday the 13th, hunger from 3 foodless days brought an end to the crisis. It's a shame those issues weren't addressed in 1953, as it could have prevented the incident in 1968. But things changed in 1969. The Oregon State Board of Control, established in 1913 to coordinate the management of state institutions, construction of state buildings, and other duties assigned by the legislature, was abolished, returning power to the state institutions themselves. John Galvin replaced George Randall as administrator of corrections, and he was an old pro, with 2 decades of work under his belt at federal prisons in Kentucky. And Hoyt Cupp became Warden Gladden's successor. Cupp saw the prison's issues immediately and took action to create peace and provide value to the lives of his wards. He often ate with inmates and chatted with them in the yard. He also expanded the prison's recreational and educational programs, constructed an 18-hole mini-golf course and the prison's first psychiatric unit, and at one point even had peacocks walking the grounds. The day after the riot, freshly minted Superintendent Cupp walked the prison's dining room as the inmates ate. He said, quote, "In my own way, I had to let them know I was running the place, and not just by being big and domineering. You have to have good discipline. You can't let people know you're fearful." He had a simple set of principles that became the state's unofficial rules. Serve hearty food, keep the institution clean, don't lie to an inmate, promote communication between inmates and officers, provide prisoners with work, education, and recreation to limit their idle time, offer rehabilitation programs to all inmates desiring change, treat inmates with respect, and expect them to follow suit. The Oregon Department of Corrections does not have a listing in its historical chronology for 1968. It skips from 1965 to 1969. Nice.
That's a little suspicious.
Just a little bit of a gap there. We don't remember what happened at this time. We just don't remember.
I feel like that's a joke I've seen in a movie about, like, German history. How they're like, oh, we have a gap in the early 40s. But yeah, it's like, why would you not have documentation for a prison for that time?
And I mean, and also they resolved it peacefully.
Right.
and diplomatically.
I wonder if it's the flub of having that guy work there with no
that's
credentials, and they just don't want anything.
That's a good.
Yeah, that would
that's
make
a good
them
point.
look very
Yeah,
bad.
I should look at that chronology again and see if they mention his name at all.
Yeah, I bet
It's
it's
probably scrubbed
tucked away.
Yeah, what a jerk.
Seriously. Yeah, and to know that you don't have the credentials and then to be like, I'm actually going to make all the decisions about this riot.
Yeah, I'm gonna lone wolf this one.
Like the ego to think that would be, that you could handle that you would have those answers.
Yeah, and I think it was like from the moment he got there, it was just winding down to that happening. There was no way around it, I
Right.
think. And especially because he wasn't formally trained in any way,
Yeah.
he could also not work with the warden of the warden of a prison,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
It really makes you wonder about his mindset and arrogance to walk into a facility like that. It's one thing if you want to lie and get a job somewhere, but something so specific and so
And high up.
Yeah, and high up and like really
president.
important.
Yeah.
It's really important that you have a safe prison and that you have it running well for the inmates, and
You're taking care of a lot of people.
yeah.
And it's all they have. I read too that I think in the 30s they abolished the use of this thing that I think was called the Oregon boot or the Oregon shackle. Have you heard of that?
No.
And it was like this giant piece of steel that went around your ankle, and then there was like a little bar that came off the back, like behind your heel, I think, and then it went under your foot or something like that. And it was like 25 pounds or 30 pounds, and it made it impossible to run away. So there were like no more escapes. But it also did a lot of damage to people's bodies.
Yeah.
Damaged them mentally, and eventually was abolished. But they didn't make good decisions in prisons for prisoners.
Yeah.
That was more of a convenience, I think.
Right.
To hobble people without actually cutting their feet off.
Right.
Pretty gross.
Well, it's always been like they're second-class citizens.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's how they were treated. And I mean, we still continue to see problems like that. But
Yeah, I feel like reading about the mother of one of the inmates that died from suicide, it seems novel to me that a person would sue the state.
Yeah.
It just seems like such a normal thing now, but then people would be like, well, I can't sue the state.
Yeah.
It's the government. Prison, huh?
I think it's a really tough conversation of what should those expectations be for a prisoner? Because on one hand, you think, oh, someone's in prison and it's a nonviolent drug offense, but it was enough that they got in the same prison with, let's say like a Wesley Allen Dodd or somebody really horrific. So it's like, how do you find that balance of saying this is for rehabilitation, this is to keep you busy? You had said like idle hands, the devil's playground.
That's really been what I've thought the whole time, is that at the very least you have to occupy an inmate's time.
Yeah.
But the most you should do is try to enrich their mind.
Yeah.
well, even animals get enrichment toys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea that they're just locked in a room and see cement 23 hours a day is kind of, what do you expect?
And when they were put in isolation, it would be whenever they got out.
Whenever they felt
Whenever
like
the guards or whoever
because
administrators
that's the thing,
let them out.
isolation is not like a sentence. They can say you're going there for 10 days or whatever, but it's not like it goes through the courts and they say, okay, you'd gotten a fight at the dining hall, you're going into isolation for X number of days. It's like, we're in charge, we decide. And isolation should be banned for everyone. That does no good for anyone, no matter what they've done. But it is hard. I remember growing up and back when my dad was a Republican, and it was like, oh, what do they need cable TV for? And you still see that, oh, they're bitching about cable and they're bitching about this. And it's like, for the most part, when you hear those arguments, I feel like it's from places that are really in desperate need. Like a couple years ago in Texas when they had that heat wave and the power went out. So there was no air conditioning and all these prisoners were just in a cement hot box, So it's like there at the very least should be those basic things. But I don't know what that answer is, because if someone I loved was hurt by someone and that person was in a prison, I would want them to rot.
I mean, it comes from learning and experimenting, and you look at other countries and how they handle prisoners.
Yeah.
If, maybe if we adopted some of those processes or had
Right.
different types of prison systems to see what the statistics show that
Right.
works, we'd make progress. Because even now, it's like we have these prisons for pay, basically.
Right.
There's constant problems, people still in isolation, people being abused. And I get it. Some of these people are terrible there. That doesn't mean like they're sentenced to daily abuse.
Right.
We have to really think about that. Like, can people be rehabilitated? And now in Oregon, we have different levels of prisons.
Mm-hmm.
People should be going to where what's appropriate. People go
Right.
work release it's appropriate for. But I mean, it's still not perfect, and it's never going to be, especially if we don't try
Right.
new things.
And it is really hard. I think it's a totally valid argument. You might be referencing, there were pictures a couple years ago from like, was that a Swedish prison or something?
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally like a spa. Everyone
Yeah.
had their little cabins out in the woods and, like a retreat. And on one hand, it's like, that's how you rehabilitate. That's how you keep people from reoffending, or at least in hopes of. But again, if I'm the victim or a victim family member and I'm looking at that, I'm being like, when do I get to go on my little retreat?
Oh, I
Or when do
absolutely agree.
it's a really hard, I think about it often.
Especially when we see cases like where somebody's daughter was killed
Yeah.
and this perpetrator is getting out on parole. Like, I get it. I totally get it. But I do think that a lot of families see the benefits, and there are a lot of families who have forgiven perpetrators
Yeah.
because they've seen those benefits.
Yeah.
We did that case in Canada with that teenage boy that he apologized to the family and they agreed he should be let out. So, I mean, yes, it's hard, but at the same time, it's like, how are we going to get better if
Yeah.
people are just being shoved away, learning how to be worse,
Yeah.
and then get out with no expectation? It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. And also, I was looking at our ballots yesterday for Oregon for the midterms. I haven't even looked at, what was going to be on the ballot. And there is a measure there regarding involuntary labor and slave labor for people in prison. So that'll be cool to
Well,
see
if
because
it passes, we'll see less people escaping, I think.
yeah, and at the very least, yeah, that needs to be abolished because that's a whole nother corporation, people owning prisons, and then they have the prisoners that give free labor and
was-
people, source
Oh,
that
there was-
labor and
There was even an article, something I didn't put in this story, that within the span of this series of articles that came out about the prison, there was a scam that the prison was running at the time where they were like selling prisoners' blood to a state lab that did testing. And they were doing some sort of thing where they were either not sending blood or they were saying that certain people sent blood who didn't, and like prisoners were getting money. It was a whole scam that got busted right before that. So
Yikes.
that stuff was happening then.
Yeah.
That sort of I don't even know what you call that, but just like using
Just shady.
humans as like blood bags to make a little bit of money
Yeah.
through your prison is
Well, 'cause,
just
I
about
mean,
one of the worst things that's awful.
We've seen prisoners fight for their right to like donate organs, like especially death row.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that makes sense if they finally okay, we'll permit it, and then they just
Of
exploit
course,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, and how can we get rich? It really does go back to that Woodstock thing, which everyone should watch, especially if you're around, because it's like, oh my God, I forgot. But it really was that moment of it. The people never mattered. It was never about the people, and it's same with the prisoners. It was never about that individual. It was never about their mental health, physical health, emotional health. You're housing them. You're basically a hotel without a concierge. Like, you have to have everything operating, and to break it down and cut those corners just to fill your pockets when it's actual human beings that you can't account for. You can sit and do the numbers of, what'll this get us and what will our profit margin be and da-da-da-da-da. Well, did you account for a riot when they get pissed off that you've been serving them horrible food
Nope,
and
they
they
did
can't go to the
not.
doctor?
And had they, it probably would never have happened.
Exactly. So if from the beginning you treat them like humans, the human element will be there and you can account for it and plan for it to an extent, obviously. But these fools. Josh, that was a fantastic 100th episode.
Thank you very much.
Pew, 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 pew.
100.
I planned it out perfectly, so mine would be 100.
Yeah.
We're just acknowledging it. We've had minis and specials and anniversary shows, but this is our 100th case episode, if you will. So that's exciting.
That's very exciting. And we're going to get to 200 faster now that we're weekly.
Heck yeah. I would like to hear everyone's rose and thorn, if you will, of our 100 episodes. Do you all know what that means?
Your favorite and least favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that sounds hurtful.
What? No, just like of things you've learned or moments we've had or cases we've done or, just the high and the low.
All right, let us know.
No, I mean you right now. I'm asking you.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, that's on the spot.
Yeah, no thanks.
Oh, all right.
Oh, when we went to New
never
York
mind.
was great. Our live show was amazing. These are roses or thorns.
That, I
These are
loved
roses.
the live show. I
Live
would
show was
love to
awesome.
do that.
It
again
blows my mind that
soon.
our live show was so
Our first year.
early.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh no, we were pretty deep into it. And I'm
No,
like,
we
oh, we were
weren't.
like 7 months
And
into
Yeah.
it.
we got to the point where we were sold out, and a couple people walked off the street and asked me, and I'm like, well, I see some extra chairs
Oh yeah,
there.
that
Sure.
was
Yeah.
great. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, the live show was awesome.
And we do plan to do more of those. We've been plotting, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, once
been
things are
plotting.
safe and good.
Yeah, missing out on was it to the UK?
That
Yeah,
sucked.
That was
sucked.
Okay,
a
now I'm ready
disappointment.
for the rose and thorn.
Yeah.
It
So
took me a
those-
minute to warm up.
Those are mine. Those seem like large opportunities and,
Yeah.
And
other live shows
speaking
and stuff.
of,
but-
that brings up a good point. Like, we've missed out on a lot of CrimeCon traveling that we had anticipated going to. So we're excited that we have a true crime festival coming up
That's
here in
right.
October. So if you want to see us do a live show, we will be doing it in Auburn, Washington on October 8th, I believe.
Yeah,
We're-
8th and 9th will be up there.
Yeah, you get their ticket for the whole weekend. We'll be there the whole weekend, and our show is on the 8th.
And you can find out all about it at pnwtruecrimefest.com.
Certainly can.
Oh, speaking of
And-
Austria,
What?
it's
It's
Switzerland.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Is that all your movies?
Yeah. I'd never seen Commando, Total Recall, or Predator, and now I've seen all three.
You didn't see Total Recall?
Mm-mm.
It's such a jam. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
Oh,
fun.
I like
it's-
the redo better, but
Oh my god.
I just like the old one because it's funny. Like, it's a little tongue in cheek, I like the new one because the guy's hot. That's
Wait,
all.
there's a new Total Recall?
Yeah, Colin Farrell and Bryan Cranston are
No.
Yep, that's
They
the good
took
guy,
it like
bad guy.
super seriously.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
it needs to be campy.
And it was
guys.
directed by the guy who did all of the Underworld movies, so it's just blue.
Oh.
But
And to be fair, I only watched it once. You know what one remake was insanely good, I thought, was RoboCop.
wow,
But
this is going nuts.
I love him.
Oh, you should watch a movie called The Informer that he is in, where he plays a guy who has to go into
You
prison.
had me at he's in.
He's shirtless, tattooed,
Oh, yes.
and he's got to survive prison, baby.
Sing me
It's
a song,
great.
baby. Y'all ready for this? Oh, fuck. Where's the keyboard again?
Oh, no.
I don't know if you noticed. She did give us a 4-star review in the beginning with
Oh,
just
and
now
it's gone
commenting
down
about her
to-
grammar.
I think it's 2 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, two stars.
How does she do
really-
it? How does she...
You can
find
just
the
go edit it.
No, I mean, how does she find the strength to keep
listen to
listening
us
to
again?
us even though she hates us
I
so
know, because she likes to hate review.
much? Like,
A lot of people
She-
do. Like, they have no life, apparently.
she needs to just make a show for herself and she can be her own grammar Nazi.
I need to admit something.
What?
I'm Tilda Jean.
No!
Oh my God, I would die.
I wish.
That would be so funny.
Oh, I should do that.
What if she is them?
Conspiracy.
I mean, maybe. It is poorly written.
Tilda Jean, make yourself known.
Sorry to brag. We have geese. She's on a crusade against the geese.
So this week, you guys, here's Emily's thoughts this week. Can
Hello?
I make enough money on feetfinder.com that I can quit my job and just do this and sell foot pics? I'm going
Probably.
to try this week and see how it works.
That's a fun violation.
I want you stepping in food, crunching berries. I want you shaving your toes, like anything.
Yeah.
Anything goes. There's something for everyone.
Pictures of the hairy ones.
Yep.
That big toe. I call it Bilbo.
Yeah,
I
yes.
feel attacked.
I've heard him call you that before.
I've
no,
called
the
them
toe,
hobbit feet.
The toe.
Nope.
I've called them hobbit feet. I've never heard
You have.
him call them.
I don't think they're hobbit feet. You have lovely feet.
Thank
Ew. Keep it outside this room. How many times do we need to talk
Oh.
about that?
Oh, just the complimenting
He was just
Her.
undoing the fact that he called my toe Bilbo. Bilto.
Froto Baggins.
Froto!
Well, sometimes it's like Frito Baggins. You know what I'm saying?
I used to have very corn-flavored, smelly feet.
Ew.
Corn flavored.
Don't make me gag.
Don't say that.
Because I want corn on the cob, and you're going to ruin
don't want to
it.
be gang-banged today.
We're gonna do it with corn.
It's really hard, you guys, to work around not being able to hear. I'll tell you that.
I wasn't sure how to respond.
I did.
Hey
I was
guys,
sure.
It's really hard to.
Showering and shitting in an abandoned military base
I
for
started
3
laughing.
days.
I'm really sorry.
You want me to see pooping?
no, I'll just not laugh this time.
Thank
She'll
you.
just be a big girl.
She from Alaska?
She is.
Were you just talking about Alaska?
No, David Sedaris was on CBS Sunday mornings. Because we're old.
Don't admit that.
I'm not a part of that.
My God. Let's see what's going on in Face the Nation.
We can't help that we're
I had
old.
to look at Rick Scott's face today.
I'd just like to note that I don't watch stuff like that. Just so
You're...
I'm not grouped with you two.
I think you do.
No, I do not. I don't watch TV during the day. I don't.
That's a very weird thing to be that defensive about.
I just have
Hmm.
I
stuff
do
to
daytime viewing.
When
I
I'm
have
doing my
stuff
work.
to do.
Mhm.
I thought it was going to be
Oh,
shit.
Me too.
What could be better than a Costco hot dog and some Big Brother tonight? Or barbecue here would have been nice.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been nice,
Yeah,
Alicia.
I wish you
Would have been real nice.
I wish you could have surprised me with that today, guys.
Oh, no surprise barbecue again?
We said it once, and I just expected every Sunday.
That would have been fun, I guess, but whatever.
You're sad every week. I don't want to see you.
You will see me.
I would love it, but I know you're a busy woman.
Also, that's daytime, and she does not watch TV in the
That's
daytime.
true.
I
also-
make
I
exceptions for
only
friends.
watch TV. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
God.
How strange that we're going to be hanging out with Greg Olson.
I can't wait to tell him how he ignored my emails.
Wrapped like a Costco hot dog.
We're like a responsible young penis.
I'm a responsible young penis.
I'm wrapped and ready for dipping.
Oh. Do you want to do some soaking?
Docking. Soaking.
Docking.
What's
That's-
docking? Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
That's
I just
very
remembered.
different.
I just remembered. Leave me alone.
A little different.
Leave me alone.
I've docked myself, I guess, onto some stuff. Maybe it's there. It's just like a
You're
little.
a kid
It's like a
just
little
playing with
extra
your skin.
pair of little kissy lips or something. Kiss my sandwich.
I like a good denim on denim. What can I say?
I just meant, was it clear?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounded great.
Okay.
You know I can't help myself. I'm
I know.
sorry.
Oh, and I didn't mean to give such a serious response in that second. I don't know why I sounded
No,
like such
that's
a little
okay. That
serious
felt-
jerk.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Yeah.
That
okay?
felt fun. That was good.
You guys didn't do a barbecue for me again?
I specifically said last week I wanted a barbecue.
How many times must I beg for a surprise barbecue?
Get you some Lay's instead.
Hey, I've never had a surprise party, okay? I've always wanted one.
Well,
Just
get
putting
ready.
that out there.
Surprise.
Wait, 6, 7, 8. Oh my gosh.
What?
Interesting.
9, 10?
This month is her half birthday.
Well,
9, 10. He just kept counting.
well. On Valentine's Day.
And now you know why anytime I write Valentine's Day, I also say, and Emily's birthday.
Yeah.
So you don't just have a gasp.
It's just a coincidence.
I didn't mean it to be so loud.
That's my day.
That's my very special love day. That's when everyone loves me. And they buy everyone each candies. What?
I get candies,
Everyone
but I get
each.
candies and gifts.
And it's the day I was born. Okay, just get ready. I'm gonna say it again.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm fine.
just prepare
Let me
yourself.
cough, though.
Yeah. My birthday. I heard it.
You know who we
I
are.
wish I didn't trust you guys. I was stupid to do that.
You're having the Emily thing.
I think I have Greg Kinnear's syndrome. What is it called?
Great Meniere's. Yep, same thing, basically. What?
They got their wish.
Fish.
Did that help?
Mm-hmm. They got their fish. I did have a fuck up in here, leash.
Oh.
A Gladden for a Randall.
Oh. Classic mix-up. A Gladden for a Randall.
It's all the same letters.
Could I exchange this Gladden for a Randall, actually?
He claimed to have served with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Sorry.
That's right. He claimed to have served with the Federal Bureau of...
Cheese.
Ooh,
Yum.
the
I'm
Federal
hungry.
Bureau of Cheese?
I'd work there. I'm an assistant. I have the biggest fucking mosquito bite on my foot, and it is causing me desperation for itching.
He often ate with inmates and chatted with them in the yard.
I heard he brought the milkshakes there, too.
Stupid.
And if you see me there, and you just give my cheeks a little slap back and
We
forth,
decided a high five.
you high five my butt cheeks, and I'll give you a bag of peanuts.
I thought it was yogurt.
I'm out of yogurt.
Murder in the Rain is a Cascade Media production, written and hosted by Emily Rowney, Alicia Holland, and Josh McCullough, edited by Josh McCullough. You can always contact us at murderintherain@gmail.com or through our website, murderintherain.com. If you just can't get enough of Murder in the Rain, for as little as $5 a month, you'll have exclusive access to bonus episodes at patreon.com. You can find us on all of the socials, and for more true crime, follow at @M_Murder in the Rain on TikTok, and you can also listen to Alicia and Josh on their other show, Always Be My Sisters. And suck my balls.